I now believe that that thing that people tell you that is your negative point, I always believe this is your gift, really, because that voice that talks too much or says too much and is too honest is actually the voice that years later, when I had my daughter with Down syndrome and she was rejected 40 times from mainstream school, that was the voice that refused to be quiet, and to speak out.
It was the last thing, at least for now. I mean, the journey isn't over, but that I opened up to, and it flowed so well. And I was like, oh my God, I was avoiding this because I had been gifted card decks, Archangel and Angel and Saints and stuff, the earlier ones. I had been gifted them by different people.
These?
And I had just, exactly that. I have that. So I just kept it aside, like I wasn't using it for many years. And then I took them out, and now I have like a whole table full of card decks. It's really amazing how much we allow when we, open our hearts.
It's interesting for me that both of you started off more on the scientific side of things, and you moved more towards, let's say, the mystical side of things. And I think that there's a place for both in our world. There needs to be some kind of a balance between, the things that we observe in our reality as well as the things that we can't immediately observe. Hey Zim, it's good to see you again. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you too. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a little bit cloudy outside in Canada today, but I'm pretty happy with how the day is going to turn out for sure.
Yeah, you just keep going on, making me feel jealous all the time, every time. We have no clouds right now to speak of.
Well, you live in an amazing, luxurious, exciting city, and Guelph is a little bit on the quieter side. So I've got to go with the weather.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. No, enjoy it. I love that for you.
I will. I do. Thank you. Zim's introduce us to our guest for today.
Oh, yes, I'm so excited. We have today with us Stephanie Hamilton. She is a healing expert with various modalities spanning 3 decades. These include Reiki, color therapy, immune system resetting, just to name a few. Having personally reversed an autoimmune condition after being on medication for 14 years, Stephanie's approach is warm and lighthearted yet practical, using her life experience and professional training to intuitively connect with clients from all walks of life. She's originally from Canada, but she left at the young age of 23, straight into Saudi Arabia, worked there, and then UAE, then New Zealand, then back to the UAE, and has been in Dubai for 13 years now. As a mother of a child with dual intellectual disabilities, Stephanie is an active parent advocate championing inclusion in the UAE since 2012. And to me, Stephanie Hamilton is a force of nature. She's very inspiring in how she embodies and embraces self-care practices daily. And I really appreciate the daily reminders and examples from her to show up and do whatever you can to take care of your body and mental health. Welcome, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the kind words.
It's wonderful to meet you, Stephanie, and welcome to the Epiphany Dialogues. One of the things that Zimmy said in that introduction there is that you healed yourself from an autoimmune issue. I'd love to hear more about that. There's lots of parallels with Zimmy as well here.
Yeah, we do have that in common, Zimmy and I. We have had conversations around this before. So it was something that once I was diagnosed, and I was diagnosed right after the birth of my daughter with Down syndrome. I had Hashimoto's, which was thyroid disease. And it's no coincidence that, when I had my daughter, I don't think that I was really honest about the grieving phase of it. I kind of pushed everything down. And, this is the throat chakra, the truth, you speak from your throat, and that's where the thyroid is, in the throat. And 6 months later, my thyroid blew out. So that was the beginning of it. And when that happened, I said to myself, I'm going to heal this. I have this, but I'm going to heal it. But I have other things to do first, but I am going to heal it. And over the years, I mean, 14 years is a long time to be on medication, and it was. And actually, I started my healing journey just before COVID. I started it, but I was still on medication. And then on COVID, I just forgot to take the medication for a couple of days. It was so busy. Everybody can remember, reflect. I had, 3 kids, homeschooling. I had one, my daughter with disability, and I had to, basically be with her all day because the father of my kids at that time was, trying to do calls, and, everybody can relate. A lot of people can relate to this. If they
Sure.
had families at the time. So I forgot to take it for a couple of days, and then I realized, okay, I actually don't feel worse. I feel pretty much the same, which was pretty bad. I still felt pretty bad. I didn't feel great, So I thought, it's worth exploring this a little bit more. And so it took me a while, but it took me around, I'd say, a year to fully recover. I mean, I had done some stuff before to start the recovery phase. But I would say I'm really a whole kind of 4 years fully recovered now.
Amazing.
So yeah, and it's really I can't tell you one magic pill or one magic way that it happened. It was various. Really, what it was showing up every day, like what Zimmy said. And this is a saying that every day on Instagram, I say good morning or good afternoon, and I say show up, and I show how I showed up. Sometimes show up is, putting my headphones on and, doing a meditation or listening to some music. And most of the time it's being active because as a woman that has ADHD, I have ADHD as well. And as a woman who is neurodivergent, it's really important for me to get up and, get my endorphins up first thing in the morning. So often for me, it's getting in nature, exercise, whatever, but so many different kind of modalities were used in the healing, I would say.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, every single thing that Stephanie shares with us so generously is really to show us a whole variety, because there's so many things. Like there's some things, as me, a neurodivergent person as well, Steph, who, there are some things that I'm just like, no, I'm never going to do that. Like the ice bath, I will get into autistic meltdown, and it's going to be so hard. But then there are other things like going to the beach every day, getting your feet in the sand and, lapping up the water. And like those, I'm just like, yes, now I've moved closer to the beach. I'm going to do this. I'm going to grow up and be like Stephanie. This is what I say to myself.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just always watching her stuff with just so much gratitude is what I feel, because you remind us every day. And yes, people like me might take months to actually go there and do it, but thank you for being consistent, and thank you for not giving up on us, really.
No, well, it's funny you say that, Zimmy, because I was the person that I would watch other people and I said, I live so close to the beach. Why am I not using this? And it took me years to get to this. I literally, it's not like I've been doing this all my life. It's really only been, I've always been interested in health and wellness, but I've been on and off. And, there was a couple years that I really struggled near the end of my marriage. And, I really struggled to show up for myself then. And that was a wake up call for me that I really needed to take my sovereignty back and my power back, in the sense of okay, I need to stop putting all my energy into other people's baskets and put it back into mine, And
Yeah.
people say, selfish is a really interesting word, isn't it? And selfish, though, it's funny. People say, that person's selfish, and it's like, oh, do you want them to please you rather than themselves? I don't understand, because actually that's what we're here to do. And if we can please ourselves and be selfish, then we can then, be so happy that it's just natural for us to please others, right?
Absolutely. I agree. I agree. Fill your cup first so that it just overflows and you're not pouring from it until it's completely empty, right? It just needs to overflow and it'll happen naturally. Can I just say, you touched upon what we wanted to talk about, so I just want to take you a little deeper into that. Before the episode, we were talking about what is a realization or epiphany that made you become who you are, change the course of your life. And of course, you have many, but the one you mentioned while we were talking, which I thought was amazing that people would benefit from, was owning your sovereignty and being an outlier and being proud of it, and marching to the beat of your own drum and seeing the benefits of it. So would you like to talk a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, and I think I'll come back to my daughter again in the fact that she has really taught me that. I've always been a little bit different. I was a kid at school, like, going to school in the 70s and 80s, and every single report card was Stephanie speaks out of turn. She's always yelling out in the class. And, I was really intelligent in school. Like, I got really good grades, but because I could remember everything, all the subjects where you had to memorize, it was amazing. Or I had to express my emotion, like in English, I could write amazing. I had great imagination. But when it comes to math, not so much, but that's fine. We
Yeah.
all cannot be mathematicians. But I guess my point is that I was always different, and that at that time it was always a negative thing. Like my mom would say, you talk so much, like, stop talking. Like you talk all the time. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
I don't know I'm the oldest of 6 children as well. I grew up as the eldest. We had 6 elderly people in the house, a lot of people to talk
Wow.
to, like, so. But anyway, moving aside from that, I think like it's interesting because I now believe that, that thing that people tell you that is your negative point, I always believe this is your gift, really, because that voice that talks too much or says too much and is too honest is actually the voice that years later, when I had my daughter with Down syndrome and she was rejected 40 times from mainstream school, that was the voice that refused to not, just to not to be quiet, and to speak out.
Right.
And, that ended up being, here in the UAE at the time, 12 years ago, that was the case. Not all schools were taking children with disability and a person of determination, as we now call them. And so I think being an outlier in that way to me means that, I think I can understand, I can appreciate my gift, what is to other people maybe my negative point, or maybe it was viewed as that in the past, is now my strength, and I'm proud of it because, I'm very much an outlier in the fact of during COVID with the vaccines, I was like, I'm not judging anyone else, but my personal choice, I don't want to take it. I'm not giving it to my kids, and nobody can sway me on that. And I had friends that maybe like shunned me, but it was like, no. And I'm happy with my decision. I don't really think about it much now, but I'm just like, I'm kind of the mind of live and let live, and, and again, it's like that I'm always in that smaller percentage, that kind of like the outlying percentage, as you say. But I would say like being able to speak out for my daughter, being able to not take no for an answer, and that was a catalyst that got I had a photography project at the time and basically called I Am Me, which stands for Most Extraordinary.
Nice.
And that photography project was all about mainstreaming, educating and advocating for people who had differences so that I could educate the public, through photography. And that photography project caught the eye of somebody in government, and that person happened to be a policy writer. And now we have an educational policy in Dubai,
Wow.
Nice.
largely due to a person who talked too much.
That is so amazing.
So, I give my daughter credit because if it wasn't for her, I would not be advocating. I would never have advocated for people with disability. I actually never had any interest in people with disability. I'm being very honest. If I didn't have a child with disability, I would be, of course, like kind and be like, okay, but it wasn't something that I was really like drawn to. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It wasn't always human rights are a big thing for me, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I need to be an advocate for people with disabilities. I did it because I selfishly want my daughter to have that education that other kids also have, right?
And through that selfishness, you're actually helping so many more people by using your voice, right? So that's something to be said about being selfish.
Hey, I don't know. I just do what I do.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about leaving home at 23. Like that was owning your sovereignty and being an outlier. I'm sure no one had probably done that at that time. Tell us how it felt and what kind of made you do that.
I think like I grew up in a very, I think a lot of homes in the 70s and 80s had their own issues back in that time. And I think I thought that I was special and that I had, like I came from a home that had some domestic abuse. And I think I thought that was the only one. But I now know that there's many more people that had that as well. But I think I was partly running away from that, to be honest, and also just the idea of adventure. I wanted to travel, and so like, if I'm honest, I probably was running away a little bit, but at the same time, I was also excited about the prospect of going and working, and I would have gone anywhere. I mean, who goes to, my friends still say it. They're like, who goes in 1996 when there was no iPhones? We had faxes only to communicate. The email was just new in Saudi.
Yeah.
We didn't have personal emails or computers. We just didn't have them. And they're like, who goes to not even Riyadh to book, like, and I think that sums me up. It's like, okay, I'm going to go to the most obscure place where nobody can find me. But no, it was actually one of the most exciting times in my life because I come from Canada. The only place I'd ever traveled was Mexico. I hadn't really traveled a lot because we had a big family. We didn't, my parents didn't have the money to put us all on a plane. Like eight of us. And so we used to do like trips in the van, big green van down east, that kind of stuff. But we did family trips in the summer to see my grandparents, but we never traveled like internationally. And I'm a Sagittarius and we're known for it's in our blood, like we need to travel.
I
So,
was gonna say that.
yeah. So I was like, I just need to get on a plane and go. And then once I said, I'll go for a year. And a year is now 3 decades, later.
Wow. So you
Amazing.
So
you went to you said so that nobody could find me, but I feel like you started finding yourself in that process.
yeah, I think that it's taken me a long time. If I'm really honest, I think I really only have got to know myself in these last, I don't know. I think like a lot has come to light. I mean, I'm 52, so I turned 50 like, well, yeah, 2 years ago, obviously. But yeah, I think in these last couple years, particularly, and maybe since leaving my marriage, even I've really learned a lot more about myself. Or maybe I had the space then to process a bit more. Um, yeah, so I feel like maybe that I started a journey to know myself, but I don't know. I think I've been very good for many years at detaching from my body. And as you know, Zimmy, with trauma, this
Yep.
is something you do. And I think I have done that for many, 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 many years. And I think it's only now that I'm actually living in my body. I'm actually showing up because I'm
Yeah.
actually in my body. And, I help other people to recover from autoimmune disease. And this is one of the biggest things that I notice. And it's probably synonymous with everybody that has any type of disease, because what is disease? It's not being at ease in your own body. That's it. It's super
True.
simple. What do you
Absolutely.
guys think? I mean, I'll ask you, what do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. And you know my views, so I'm gonna let Nick take that.
No, I agree as well. There's certain things that we go through cycles in our life, and our body always seems to speak up to say, "Hey, you should be thinking about this, or doing this, or not doing something else." And that's the thing that we need to bring into balance, for sure. Steph, I'm going to ask you, when you went to Saudi for the first time, what is it that you went there to do, and how did you transition from what that was, if different, to what you're doing now?
So I went to Saudi Arabia to work in the pathology labs because that's what I
Okay.
did at the time. And, it's mostly, I think back then, if you went to Saudi, you were either a teacher or you were medical, pretty much, or you're in the army. Those are the three kind of things, right? Pretty much that I saw expats doing there mostly, probably other things too, but those were the main jobs. And so I went there in 96 to Tabuk to work in the lab. I later worked in Riyadh. And yeah, I kind of, look, I worked in the lab up until really until I gave birth to my first daughter. I worked in Abu Dhabi in Sheikh Khalifa Medical Center. That was the last hospital I worked in. And it just because of the way things are here, where you don't really get a lot of time with your kids, you don't get maternity leave and all these things. So I transitioned actually into a jewelry business, and I did really well with it. I did that for about 5 years. I was top in global sales in that. And
Wow.
yeah, it was like fake diamonds.
I did not know about that one.
Yeah, so I did that for about 5 years, desert diamonds, So people still say to me, "Oh, I remember you from the desert diamond days." I'm like, "Oh yeah."
How cool.
So I did that, and then whatever I did at any given time was just to fit in with my role as a mother, really. Like I had to kind of adapt. So I thought, okay, if I do this jewelry business, I can do parties, I can do markets, I can sell, directly to people. And back then in Dubai, we had lots of these markets, like the Messiah Center and, all over the marina. And so I thought this is a good thing to do as a mom. Like it gives me the flexibility to be with my daughter. And then the next transition was into photography. And I just transitioned into that for about 8 years. And that's when I really started the healing work, actually, because I really feel like photography is a very healing art. You see things differently when your focus is so focused, if that makes sense. It's like, yeah, you're kind of taking away, the environment around you, and you're focused on really just what you're seeing through the lens. And I think I started photographing my kids at home. This is very healing for me with my daughter with Down syndrome. I feel like this was I started a blog because I lived in New Zealand. I couldn't work because we'd moved to New Zealand during the crash of 2009. So I was like, okay, let's. I sold all my gold from the business because I didn't think New Zealand was a great place for the fake diamonds at the time. So, and I bought myself a camera, and then I started to blog and take photos. And then when I moved to Dubai, I just transitioned right into family photography. So that was really, I think, the start of my, of my healing process in terms of like how I started to see things differently. And being in New Zealand was also very healing because it's a very different energy to Dubai. And I studied a modality there called Orasoma, which is colored bottles with crystal
Yes.
plant.
I want to
And
hear more about that. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm so
yeah,
excited. That's always fascinated me because the other things that you do, I'm aware of, but this one particularly, and it's so beautiful when I see all the bottles. So, yeah.
yeah, so that's crystal plant and color energy. And they're basically colors. And the thing that's great about Orasoma as a healing modality is that color is a universal language. It doesn't matter what you speak. Like red represents, like if I say red, give me some words for red, both of you, and I'll show you how it works.
Heat.
Okay,
Danger,
yes. Zimmy?
danger,
Yeah. Anything else?
blood.
Passion.
Yeah. So all of those are red words, right? And some of them I don't like to say positive or negative. I say there's contrast, right? In them, like, danger, passion, there's contrast there, right? And depending on the situation, like I can say angry, like red could be anger, right? Of course, it could be anger. And people say, well, that's bad, but well, it's not bad if you're getting angry about something that's happening that's really unjust, right? So again,
Yeah.
we try to label things good or bad. We just look at the perspective and how does that work for that person, Like, how is this anger serving you or is it not serving you? So
Right.
I really like the system because it works really well with kids. It works really well with adults too. And it's very, they take the bottle, they don't really know what's going to come out of it, but a lot can come out of this color. Yeah. So I started with that modality, went into Reiki, and now I don't do that modality on its own. I mix everything together now. Yeah, I have a lot of different modalities that I work with, but mostly kind of intuitive work with plants and animal spirits that come into the Reiki. And then the color is a big one as well.
And tarot too, right?
Yes, I do tarot as well, which is connected to the colored bottles. So the deck that I use is actually related to the bottles. So it's nice because I've been working with that system for so long that it's like second nature to me. It's kind of
Right.
it's easy for me to read now because it's been so long that I've that I really love the system, you know?
Nice. I need to try the whole thing. I did come to you for a session of Reiki, but I want to try the color and the tarot and have
Yeah,
some
that would be
fun with it.
amazing.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah, this was a good reminder. Hi, everyone. We just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you for being here with us at the Epiphany Dialogues, where curiosity meets consciousness. If you're enjoying this episode, please hit the like button, follow, subscribe, and share with like-minded people.
And you're also welcome to join our conversation. If you have an epiphany to share, please leave us a comment or email us. Details are in the description below. And with that, back to the episode.
I've been reading it for a long time, but not, I didn't really have I think, sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Like we have this imposter syndrome, right? And I don't know why I had such an imposter syndrome with tarot, but I really did, because I read the Orosoma bottles. I mean, what's the difference, And actually, like I told you, the cards I read are from that system.
Yeah.
And they mix with traditional tarot as well. And I don't know, I think for some reason, I kept thinking, I can't really do this. And then I have a mentor actually that I go to for my readings. And she said to me, why are you not doing this? Like, I don't understand. Like, why don't you offer this so many? Because she's so busy and she's booked up. She said, I don't understand why you don't do this. So I started to offer it with the Reiki, and I still do. I offer the Reiki and tarot combo. And actually, it's such a good session. And I actually realized I really enjoy it. And I laugh for almost the entire session because I'm really connected to spirit. So I think that was part of what I was afraid of. I realized that I was really afraid of connecting with the wrong side of spirit, I think. But I realized that no, again, when I show up and my intention and I ground myself in that, in the good energy, then I don't need to worry about anything. So now I have no fear around it at all. But I think I had some fear around it and also some doubt. But I read for clients and they leave and they're just beaming, they come in and they're heavy and they're stressed and whatever. And I'm like, I really enjoy doing this. It's so fun. And some of the funniest things come through, like, things that I'll say and I'm like, who says this? And they're like, my granddad says that, or they'll say, my mom says this. And I'm like, okay, there we go. So it's like I pick up a lot of the downloads I get when I do though, as with spiritual work, it's a lot of it's downloading, right? And I think a big part of that too is just letting go. I was like, Steph, let go. And I always tell them, I don't need to be right. I read the cards for you if you resonate. But I think before I felt like I had to give them exact information. So I've just let go of that now. And it's always like very valuable to them, which is the main point.
Yeah, it's amazing how it flows, because cards are the last thing, in my modalities that I opened up to, by the way, as well. Like, because I started with clinical hypnotherapy that was quite intellectual and, it was practical, scientific. And then I moved on to all the energy work that I do. I started with Reiki and then pranic, and it's kind of developed something of my own. And so I was doing a lot of things, like even Akashic Records reading, but cards for some reason felt like, I think I had a kind of a block towards predictive energy and I didn't want to go there. So it was more like, and then I thought, okay, well, I don't have to do tarot. I can do like oracle and guidance and, angel cards, and they're so uplifting and there's still guidance, but, let me start because the intuition was flowing so well and I was channeling anyway, right? And so I thought, let's bring cards into it. And it became like such a popular thing. Like now, even if the clients come for another type of session, they'll say, oh, can I get a couple of cards at the end? I'm like, yeah, of course. And it just confirms whatever we have worked on or, validates, and it reminds. It's really amazing. So yeah, it was the last thing, at least for now. I mean, the journey isn't over, but that I opened up to, and it flowed so well. And I was like, oh my God, I was avoiding this because I had been gifted card decks, Archangel and Angel and Saints and stuff, the earlier ones. I had been gifted them by different
like
people,
these?
and I had just, exactly that. I have that. So I just kept it aside, like I wasn't using it for many years. And then I took them out, and now I have like a whole table full of card decks. It's really amazing how much we allow when we, open our hearts.
Do you think, I'm going to ask you that question. Do you think, Simi, that we as women, do you think this is because this may have been something that we may have been punished for or persecuted for in the past? Do you think that that's why maybe we have this like kind of cellular fear, or we had this fear or trepidation around it?
Yeah, no, I think it's entirely possible. And, you know, it was quite common. This is exactly what the feminine embodiment of us looked like in tribes, right? This is what we used to be responsible for, being intuitive and guiding and almost like visionaries, right? So, yeah, no, I get that. I think personally for me, it didn't feel like that. It just felt like I don't want to box things into a predictive mode. So I know that even in tarot, you don't necessarily have to predict. I get that, but just tarot for me, and that's all I thought of when I thought of cards. You know, that's how limited my knowledge was about cards. So I thought, no, because as soon as you heal something within yourself, your energy shifts, and then you're out of that energy which was foreseen, you know. So I was just avoiding that part of it, but I feel maybe deeper now that you say that there might be something more to it, you know. As soon as I open myself up to, okay, let's just do oracle cards, angel cards, they're nice, you know, soft guidance and inspiring type energies rather than predictive. Let's start with that and see where it goes. But yeah, no, I feel what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, I thought about this as well a little bit. First of all, I had a really amazing experience with somebody, actually a mutual friend of ours, Zimmy, who I'm not going to name right now, but she did a tarot card reading for me many years back. And the result from that was a very interesting one that at the time I interpreted it in a certain way, and then I forgot about it. And many, many years later, it turned out that that's exactly what happened. There was a death involved, there was a betrayal involved, there was a certain situation that was very significant, that
Wow.
was significant to people that I know, and in fact the whole country. And all of that actually happened. And it's only when I thought back to that tarot card reading many years back, I realized that was exactly what was the reading, that was my interpretation, and that's exactly what happened many years on. So it was definitely very incredible. And I did ask that friend recently to say, we're going to be meeting up again soon. Bring your tarot cards, because let's do another reading. Let's see what comes up. And she refused. She said, I've stopped doing that. I've kind of stopped going in that direction completely.
Ooh,
and so I said,
that?
okay, that's fine. I think part of it was what Steph said earlier, about kind of being afraid of the darker side of the energies, perhaps. Some of it might have been to do with religion, that sort of thing is I think the reason what she said, that she doesn't want to go in that direction anymore. But I did write about this in my book as well. When in older times, people who were using their intuition really, really well to not only be able to sense things that were not immediately observable, they were able to sense the future, stuff like that. People started getting really afraid of those things and started shunning it and shutting it down and, burning people at the stake and all of this kind of stuff. And I think at that time, children that were not aware of the politics of it or the religious side or whatever, they might have had those intuitions, they might have come up with some visions, etc., of certain things, and been told by their parents immediately, shut that down, We don't talk about that. We don't go in those directions, because there was so much fear of what that might lead to in their lives as kids, as families, and all of that. But it's interesting for me that both of you started off more on the scientific side of things, and you moved more towards, let's say, the mystical side of things. And I think that there's a place for both in our world. There needs to be some kind of a balance between the things that we observe in our reality, as well as the things that we can't immediately observe. other
Well,
than
I
through
think,
medium like this?
yeah, yeah, I think in mine and Steph's case, I think we were both more embodying our masculine energies, action,
Mm.
fighting, you know, all sorts of things to kind of get into that place where we felt safe enough to then embody our feminine, which is, I mean, at least that's my experience. What is yours, Steph? Does that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, I think I was also I was very certain I didn't want to get into predictive mode either, like what you said. And I think predictive is more that masculine, right? It's more that kind
Yeah,
of directive energy of like, this is going to happen.
true.
Whereas I read from a place of guidance, and I tell people, look, this energy's here. It's sliding doors. It's always, this is the energy right now. And how you choose to act, like you're in charge. I always say to them, there's no one else that's like in charge of the, you know what I mean? It's like, this is the
Yeah,
energy you have to harness, and it's up to you what you do with it. And I do read from a very, a positive place. I mean, obviously in tarot, it's not all positive. There's signs, but I think I have a good gift of being able to inspire them in some way. And when something comes up, let's say I'll know that they're in a bad relationship by the cards. I'll just say, tell me about what are you
yeah,
planning on leaving at the moment, or something like that. And, because it's very obvious. And they'll say, yeah, I'm thinking of leaving my partner. And I mean, it's very obvious in the cards. So, but I'll just say, what are you feeling around this right now, and let them kind of guide it. But often for them, they know what they're doing. Most the people come, they know if they're coming to know about their career or their love life or whatever. And I don't tell them, oh, you must leave or you must do this or you must do that. It's more like, this is the card. But what do you feel around this? And they're like, this is what I need to do. And it's like, this card is showing that you're on the right path. It's more of
right.
that rather than, it's like, it's the cards are really telling them. And then I'll get direct messages too that are very strong from spirit that will be like, tell them this. And then I'll tell them, and they're like, "Oh my God." You can always tell when the message is very authentic because they get very like passionate about it. So, but I like you, I don't want to get into that predictive space. And I think like what you said, masculine, feminine, I think it's about allowing. So again, I was pushing the messages out. In my Reiki, I've had spirits come and try to talk to the client, and I told them to go away. I don't want to talk to them. And then, but I had, so the mediumship ability is there as well. So it's like I kind of pushed that away. But now I'm like, okay, I'm open. If a spirit needs to come and they need to tell them something, then I tell them. I just tell the client, take them with you when you go. That's
Yeah,
it. It's like, but I think like, I think the feminine is about being more open and allowing, but also it's very important to put those boundaries in place as well. Like, like what you said, what you said, Nick, about your friend deciding not to do it. I'm a firm believer that the energy that you are is what you attract. And so if you are in a dark place, then no, it's not a good idea to read. Like I
Right.
didn't, when all this last year, when, I was really in a heavy, heavy, heavy space, like, with everything that was happening in Palestine, what the heaviest for me personally. And I was like, I can't serve clients. Like I just can't. So my business, I really was not serving clients for a long time because it would be a disservice for me. My energy was dark and heavy, but it needed to be,
Right.
that's where I needed to be. Sometimes I think we give too little credit to the dark side of the feminine. I think we have to allow that side to be there because that is part of who we are. And this is, why this is what has partly been suppressed as well. It's like, well, you need to be a good girl. You need to be, everything is around like, you need to be a good girl. You need to be this certain way. You need to like keep your mouth shut and you need to, this is all we can see now. It's conditioning to keep in control in some way, right? We
100%.
are, we are chaos at our core. Let's be honest.
Yes.
I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I think
Creators.
we're chaotic creators.
Yeah, totally agree.
I mean, but we're chaotic creators led by consciousness, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah,
But what do
it's
you
a
think
great
about
mix
that?
of compassion and chaos, right?
Yeah, what do you guys think about this idea of the dark feminine? I mean, I don't know, it's just come to mind because I think it does. I think we give too little credit to this. It's if you don't experience the dark, then how can you really appreciate the light, you know?
Yeah, that's a book I was reading recently, Conversations with God, that somebody recommended me,
Oh,
and
yes, Neil,
that talks about the
Neil
same.
Donald Walsh.
you don't
Yeah.
know Walsh. Yeah,
Yes,
great book.
yeah,
Classic. Yeah.
and that talks exactly about that, right? Is that in order to really appreciate the light, you have to know the darkness and similar themes. So yeah, there's a lot of sense in that for sure. Steph, one of the questions that we always ask our guests on the show is if you had a time machine and you could go back in time and speak to a younger version of yourself who might have been at a crossroads or in some difficult situation or anything like that, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
This is a great question. I think I would tell myself to feel more of the feelings, not to be afraid of the feelings because the feelings are, I think I pushed a lot of, I definitely know that I suppressed a lot of feelings. And I think, excuse me, see my throat's going. Throat chakra is, yeah, having trouble with this one, but we'll take a drink of water. I think if I had allowed myself, or if I understood how important it was to feel, then I think I would have had a different experience in different ways. Like I think I had made myself smaller in a lot of instances because it wasn't acceptable to get angry out loud. It wasn't acceptable to be joyful out loud. It wasn't acceptable. The saying of our era is, children are to be seen and not heard. When I don't know who made that up, but they suck.
Yeah.
So, because children are meant to be heard, the laughter, all of it, the
Yes.
sadness, everything. And I think that's what I would tell myself, that it's okay. Don't be afraid of your emotions. I wish I understood emotional intelligence back then and was not fearful of the consequences of me expressing myself. I'm a very expressive person. And I don't think there's many times when I just didn't listen anyway. That's the neurodivergence. But I think I trained myself over time through punishment or whatever, discipline, to unfeel, if that makes sense. And I don't think that was a good thing. And now in the years when I'm older, I have to, excuse me, I don't know if I can swear, but I had to unfuck myself, like, from all of that unfeeling, it's like to get into a place where I can feel to heal, and
Yeah.
and I don't think for a lot of years I knew how to heal or how to feel. Sorry, I didn't know how to feel. I actually lost the ability, I would say.
Yeah, and a lot of that happens to us through exactly what you just said about children not being heard and that they should just be seen, is we are born as our authentic selves and we express ourselves as our authentic selves, and then we get the world telling us how we should behave and what we should do and what we should say and not say and what we should feel and not feel, and all of these things, rather than being authentic to the things that come up within us organically. And then we spend years and years trying to unfuck ourselves and be more authentic to who we actually are.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that, if you're not in that space around people that get it and people that are still in that space of that they're still suppressing, it
Yeah.
can be challenging, because, let's say I get angry at something and I state that I'm angry, but the other people around me have not come to that realization yet. It's like, oh, she's really an angry person, isn't she? Like, wow, oh, like, stay away from her. But, why are we shaming each other? Why are we shaming for our emotions? Like, this is the human experience. We are given all of these emotions for a reason. And I don't know if you guys know this, Dr. David Hawkins and his work, Power versus Force, but he shows the cone. I call it the cone of emotions. It's not called that. It's Power versus Force. But it's funny because the two bottom resonating emotions are guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Shame is the lowest. And as women, we have no problem with being guilty. Mother's guilt. I feel guilty that I didn't see my mom, or I didn't do this for my partner, or whatever. But, and it's funny because the human body is, a healthy human body resonates around 50 to 65, or I've got the number wrong, but let's say it's around 50, okay? And guilt and shame are 20 and 30, so they're below the healthy emotional kind of range. And anger is 150. So anger is actually a healthy emotion.
Right.
Obviously directed in the right way,
Right.
you know, and ideally, like, so how do you raise your vibration? You can go from guilt, and then you go to fear, and then you go to trepidation, and you go to, okay, now I'm in anger. Like now, because they always say that behind behind anger are other emotions, and you know this, Simi.
Yeah.
Like, so there's always another underlying emotion behind anger. So it's like, is it that you're scared, or is it that you have guilt or shame or whatever? But then once you get to anger, then you can go up from there. You know, acceptance, courage, like all of these things. You know, and I just wish we knew this before, because anger is one of the most shamed emotions. I think anger is fully underrated. You know, and I think that we need to be more angry.
True.
And, you know, you see what's happening in the world right now, and, you know, we're shamed about being angry. No, we need to be angry about this. It's also important that we
Absolutely.
don't stay angry, because we cannot be proactive. Like, we have to use that anger and transmute it into something where we can take action, right? Or we can, you know, try and do something of service, in some way to help, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think anger gets a really bad rap. I'm actually very pro anger. I will say.
Anger is a release, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, just to be able to say, it took me years to say, like, yeah, I am angry. Like, you know, the father of my kids would say to me, like, "Oh my God, you're so angry," and I'd be like, and now I say, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah.
You know, I am angry. I'm allowed to be angry, and I say it, and I remind him, I say it's a human emotion. Like, you know, it's okay for
Reason
you
for
to
it.
be angry.
Exactly.
No, yeah, because, and especially with neurodivergence, like, you know, as women, you know this, Zimmy, I learned to mask for so many years.
Yeah.
I think that's what I forgot when you were asking me, what would I tell my younger self? It would be just to not mask.
Yeah.
You know, because we learn to mask, to be like everyone else, to be the good girl. And, you know, and now I'm just like, I'm unmasking fully. You know, if I'm angry, I'm angry. And I'm like, listen, guys, I'm angry. Like, I'm sorry, but this really pisses me off. And I'm with my kids too. I'm like, you guys are pissing me off. Like, I told them the other day, I got really upset with them. And I told them, you know what? I said, I've parented for 24 years. I said, I'm actually done with you guys. I said, if you don't like me, I said, I'm willing to walk away from you right now. Because actually, I've been with you for 24 years. I'm done. And you know, it felt really good to say that. And then they were like, oh, and I was like, yeah, guys, you know, don't push me. So I think it's healthy to say this, you know?
It
Yeah, no, I
definitely
think
can be.
you've touched upon a couple of really important points. One is, yes, women are supposed to not express anger as much as men. And that's why I believe you see that autoimmune diseases, 80% of them affect women, because we're holding so many of those emotions. We don't feel safe to express our emotions, especially anger, though higher, healthier ones, right? And we're just steeping in those lower ones. So that is very important for people to recognize, that find a safe place to express your emotions, acknowledge your emotions. You're allowed to have those. And yeah, you know, like it's better than suffering so much, because yeah, you see how, you know, the disparity between how many illnesses are predominantly affecting women versus men. And you have to realize that if every illness is created by, you know, an emotion, then what is going on here, right? So that is, like, yeah, definitely. Thank you for bringing that up. And masking as well, that you mentioned. That's another thing that we're just having to fight. You know, what our true nature is, just to fit in, just to, you know, yeah, be accepted and to belong. Whereas now we know, thankfully, I mean, me and you, same age, you know, we're living in this era where we are confident with our weirdness or awkwardness or whatever you want to call it, the neurospiciness, like whatever it is, we're owning it. And we're finding that more and more people are actually either on the spectrum of neurodivergence or they love us anyway. Even if they're neurotypical, they're like, oh my God, you're so cute. You're so weird. Come here, and they will adopt us. And we don't have to actually mask and try to fit in. And, like you do, you set your boundaries like, okay, no, I can't do this. This is, I have to recharge, or I have to, whatever it is that I have to do. I do the same thing. Like, no, sorry, I socialized 2 days. I'm not going to do it for another 2 weeks. I need to recharge. And that's it. And my friends know it. And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So it's really liberating, both the unmasking and the expression of our emotions. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's funny you said about the autoimmune, because Gabor Mate has been speaking a lot about this, and I also I absolutely know this to be true. And that is, there's two main archetypes with autoimmune diseases, and that is the people pleaser and the victim.
Absolutely.
And both synonymous with autoimmune diseases. And I had both of them for sure, 100,000,000%. Like, if I could use everything as a victim, I came from a domestic abuse, and now I have a child with Down syndrome, and and not necessarily outwardly, but in my own mind, my own reasons for not moving forward, or, and I'm not giving myself a hard time. I'm very compassionate with myself, but I think there was times where I just was like, nah, I'm not doing this because, and then I would be like, why do I have this? Like, why do I have this life? Like, why am I stuck with this? There was a lot of that too, but I think I'm much better now at seeing the gift through the challenge, rather than that. But yeah, those two archetypes are, the people pleaser, huge, like especially among women. It's a big one.
Do you guys have anger rooms in Dubai?
We do have a couple of smash rooms, yes.
Smash rooms?
But
Yeah.
usually we just take it out on any male member amongst our family or household.
I'm glad I moved over
Nick,
to Canada in that case.
Yeah, you're safe.
My wife did come with me, so there's that. Neurospiciness, you heard it here first.
Yeah. We love a bit of neurospicy.
Yeah.
Steph, it was a real pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us here on the Epiphany Dialogues. We really appreciated having you here.
It was wonderful, Steph.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun with you guys, chatting to you guys. Thank you.
It's
Have
great
a lovely
meeting you.
evening.
Take care. Zims, I will see you later.
Yep, absolutely.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a good one.